everyone, it's Janet Wakeland here with an unscheduled Facebook Live, but I wanted to pop on with part one of some amazing tips for embossing. Embossing is a really cool look where you get this raised, touchy-feely metallic look on your projects. This one doesn't have a total metallic look for a reason, and you're going to find out why in just a few minutes. The reason why I wanted to showcase embossing for you today is because beginning Friday, which is known as Black Friday here in the US, I do have 15 holiday gift and or stocking items that are significantly discounted and or include a free stocking, free tag, free product with purchase, lots of details in my newsletter. So let's get right to some embossing tips and what embossing is in part one of Embossing 101. So the first thing that you need is a heat tool. And I am actually enamored of Stampin' Up's heat tool. I've used many heat tools in my 25 years. Stampin' Up's heat tools have evolved from being a non-exclusive heat tool to their own exclusive heat tool in my 25 years. The reason that I love this heat tool is it has two heat settings, which means that you can do a very low heat, which is great for doing shrink plastic, and then some other techniques, and then a quick high heat, which is perfect for embossing. Normally this metal tip that you see kind of encased in this plastic is exposed on a lot of other embossing tools and is extremely hot and easy to burn yourself. I love that Stampin' Up has encased it, so I no longer have to worry about burning myself. Also, the tool has this great little foot stand here, which means that I can put it on my counter. If I'm doing multiple, sometimes I will actually leave it running so that it stays hot and ready to emboss lots of my projects. The other thing that I love is it's quiet. Some embossing tools literally sound like an airplane taking off from your craft table. And this one, by heat tool standards, is quiet. So a heat tool is vital to embossing. No, you cannot put it in the oven, and no, you cannot hold it over a toaster. I've seen it all tried in my 25 years. The other thing that you need is a really wet ink. Wet ink holds the powder. It grips the powder so that you can heat it and get that pretty raised look. The standard of wet ink for embossing throughout the crafting universe is Versamark. And I always recommend that when you're buying any ink pad that you always get the ink refill so that you have it on hand for those late night crafting sessions. And then Stampin' Up has an assortment of embossing powders. This literally is the basics. And then you're just going to grab yourself any fun stamp set that you want to work with. This is a sneak peek of a celebration stamp set coming called Friendly Hello. And we're going to be using the Hello Friend to showcase some of the basics of embossing. So let's move this aside. Let's set all of our products off to the side. And I'm just going to bring in ones that I've already kind of embossed on just a little bit. Well, let's start with the blank one first. Another tool that is nice to have when you are embossing is a surface to work on. I actually like to work on a 11 by 17 grid paper, and or I like to work on these aluminum foil pans that are really popular in the baking section. Has a little bit of a lip. It will catch any kind of stray powder, just keeps my surface clean. In addition, this aluminum pan can provide a reflective surface to help heat that much faster. So that's just a little personal tip. It is not required, but it's what I like to have on hand. Something else that is nice is something called an anti-static tool. Years ago, Stampin' Up sold an embossing buddy, and if you still have one, that's great. That will work perfect for what I'm talking about. If not, you can work with a Swiffer cloth, or in this case, just simply a dryer sheet, and you can just rub it across your cloth. Something else that you can do if you own an embossing buddy and it seems to no longer being effective is you can take a little bit of cornstarch and wrap it up in cheesecloth, and you can also just rub it across your surface. The reason you want to do that is, of course, every time we hold a piece of cardstock, our hands transfer oil to the project, and also by rubbing this across your cardstock, when you go to use your ink, only the surfaces that are inked now will hold that embossing powder. So an anti-static cloth will help with any excess powder that may be around. So whether you're using a dryer sheet, you're using a Swiffer cloth, you're using one of Stampin' Up's retired embossing buddies, or you make your own embossing buddy with a little bit of cornstarch and cheesecloth, an anti-static cloth is absolutely great. So you're going to take a stamp and you're going to ink it up with the Versamark, whether you do top down or bottom up. It just depends on the stamped image, but you always want to have a well-inked pad, okay? You're going to take your image, you're going to stamp it, and you may or may not be able to see just kind of that little halo of color there. And let's just do gold here. Let me grab some gold. And I always work with my powder in a large container. Thankfully, as a demonstrator, I am blessed to be able to purchase at a discount. So I have several containers of gold here. I also do large customer events. I will show you in 1 second real quick, just working from a single little container just like this. So you're going to put your powder on it and you're going to shake the extra off. So what happens if you don't have a large tub with a large mouth like what I just used? Let's ink this back up. We're going to stamp it below. And let's go ahead and, wrong powder here for just a second. Let me just grab a single individual powder that we can work with here. And if you don't have that large tub and all you have is just your small container, which is fine, there's nothing wrong with that, you're going to sprinkle it over your card. And then you want to make sure that you have a piece of paper underneath that you can go ahead and knock all of that extra paper off. And then with this paper, what you're able to do is just funnel all of that powder back inside, just like that. So whether you use a large tub like I do, which I find easier for myself, my customers, to put the excess powder back in, or you use a little container, they both work, okay? It just depends on your crafting style and if you're a demonstrator, your business style. So then the next thing that you need to do is you need to heat this. One of the things that I've learned is that I like to call it chase the change. I like to start on one end and move my way across. If you stand here doing this, doing the swirl, what's going to happen is it's going to take longer for you to heat and you actually may miss something. So I am going to turn this on and I'm going to heat for just a second. I don't do voiceover videos, so it will get a little noisy for just a second, but we are going to chase the change on this project right here. So let's just hold this up. And what's going to happen is you're going to see it go from this powdery look to this really like shimmery gold. Can you start to see it happening? And I'm just going to work it across. And then just like that, it's heated. And I will tell you that embossing was one of the reasons why I discovered rubber stamping. I won't say it's why I discovered Stampin' Up. It's why I discovered rubber stamping. And I went and bought powders. I went and bought stamps from a local stamp store in Bothell, Washington. And I got home and I didn't know what to do. I tried everything in the world to make it work. The store had simply sold me the powders, the tools. Nobody was there to teach me. And it was a flippin' hot mess, guys. And so I was still intrigued. And when I discovered Stampin' Up, and then I discovered the steps, I was much happier. So one of the benefits of Stampin' Up is that you always get a demonstrator there to teach and to help you. So that is Basics Embossing 101. You're going to ink your image with your Versamark that looks dirty over time, and if it's stained, that's okay, it doesn't transfer. You're going to add powder, you're going to shake it off, and you're going to heat it. So now let's have a little bit of fun. I'll heat this later. This is not going to go away. This is not an issue, just setting it aside, waiting for it to heat. So we can set it aside. Which means for those of you wanting to emboss for Christmas, you can definitely do what's called assembly line stamping. So let's have a little bit of fun with this. You're not limited to one color embossing. Let's just put our image down here. And in this case, I'm going to use several different metallics. I'm going to start first on one end, and I'm starting on one end. That's the lowest, closest end to my bowl. Okay, that's the tip for this. I'm going to start on one end, just like this. And I've got gold first. Next, I'm going to come in with silver. And I'm going to go right next to that, and I'm going to allow it to flow over top of the gold. The gold is stuck to the Versamark, okay? The Versamark is coated with gold. So as the silver falls, it's going to go right past that because the powder needs something to stick to, if that makes sense, okay? And then lastly, I'm going to come in with the copper, and I'm going to put a little bit on. And again, the same thing. I'm going to just allow it to fall past. If you look at this, you can actually see copper, silver, gold, okay? And then you're going to go ahead and heat it. And once it's heated, you are going to have those multicolors. In this case, I had gold, silver, and white. So you can do that multicolor embossing. How fun is that, right? By just having some fun with it. Now, something else that you can do, in this case, I just have a tiny little jar. You can find these at the dollar spot. You can find these at dollar stores and big box craft stores and things like that. It's just a tiny, tiny little jar. And in this jar, what I have done is I've taken different embossing powders and I've just simply kind of sprinkled them in. Just kind of playing around with different colors. And I've put the lid on it. And I've given it a shake. It's not a whole lot, guys. You're not wasting your powder. You just have some mixed up powder inside of that. And what we're going to do with that then is we're going to do the same steps. We're going to ink up our stamp. Which one doesn't have? There we go. We're going to stamp it down. We're going to take our little jar of embossing powder. Let's get everything else out of the way here for just a second. I don't know about you, but I crowd myself when I craft sometimes. I have this massive craft room, and I die laughing because it truly can house crafters coming to stamp with me. But I look around this room and I use every square inch of it personally. I could have a whole house for crafting just for myself. So you're going to put your powder on that, and let's just heat this one. So close your ears for a minute if it gets a little noisy. But what you're doing is you're creating just kind of a confetti effect of that powder. It's not really gold. It's not really silver. It's not really white. So it's just kind of this confetti effect. You can see the different sprinkles that are in it. And the effect of it's going to, like, is there more gold? Is there more silver? Is there more white? Something else is that dependent on your powder, if you're using non-Stampin' Up! Powder that's like a chunky embossing powder, embossing from the bottom will definitely help it heat a little faster. And you can also set your paper on fire or burn it. I have a teammate who was embossing while she was scolding her child. Her child had come in to whatever she was crafting on, and she was heating away and looked up from the paper and was scolding her child. And the child actually said to her, Mom, your cardstock's on fire. So once you see that it is shiny, you need to stop, okay? Because it is possible to set your cardstock on fire. And in addition, if you are heat embossing, It's also possible to get a little bit of scorch marks. So what you're looking for is just that simple, shiny look, which my last tip is it really is helpful to emboss in a well-lit environment. And that's why I start at one end and I follow the shine, or I call it chase the change. You can see it going from dull powder across. So one last tip for you. Let's put this mixed up powder in my little jar here. And let's set that aside. And have you ever wanted to emboss in all of Stampin' Up's colors? Well, it is totally possible to emboss with all of Stampin' Up's colors. You need Stampin' Up's classic ink. You need a Versamark pad. And don't forget, my pad is well loved, well used. It is well inked. It is also very dirty looking, but that's okay, right? I'm not embossing these colors. I'm embossing the metallic powders that you saw. I'm going to be embossing in just a minute Bumblebee. Your Versamark pad will get dirty. Don't panic, it's okay. As long as you have a re-inker and it's wet. The whole key of this pad is that it's wet, not that it's clean and pretty. So let's take our stamp and we're gonna ink it up really good. Oops, I should have opened this up first. So let's open this up, have our pad ready. Let's ink this up. Now I'm gonna stamp it on a well-inked stamp pad, okay? And now I'm gonna push it over here. And I'm gonna go ahead this time and I'm gonna add a little bit of clear powder to it. I'm going to shake it off. I'll add my heat to it. And what you end up with is that raised, touchy, shiny, embossed image. So you can emboss all of your Stampin' Up! Images. And yes, you see Hello Friend on here. It has not damaged this ink pad, trust me, okay? That will all resolve. I can go back to using this as a Bumblebee ink pad and I can stamp on traditional cardstock. Let's just prove it to you, because I'm like a seeing is believing kind of person, right? So no issues with my stamped image, even though it says hello on there, okay? So it is totally possible to get a really fun embossed image with all of Stampin' Up's classic inks. So just some of the basics of embossing, but I have a whole lot more fun tricks up my sleeve with Embossing 101 Part 2. So make sure that you are following and liking my page so that you can get lots of tips for paper crafting. And just as a reminder, starting on Friday, I have a I have an embossing stocking that is specially discounted. I have a personal, remarkably created special that begins on Friday and will run for 2 weeks. And there are 15 amazing paper crafting ideas that are part of my 2-week holiday special. So if you are not on my newsletter, make sure that you message me so that you can be on my newsletter to find out all about that special sale. So thanks for popping on with me in the middle of an afternoon and in the middle of a busy holiday weekend. I just want to take this time, because I'm not sure I'm going to go live tomorrow or Thursday, to say happy Thanksgiving and to just a huge shout of thanks for you being a part of my Stampin' Up! Journey. Thanks, guys, and happy Thanksgiving!